This meeting is being recorded.
Okay, guys, welcome to the show. We were not allowed to talk about the new overtime rules this week. I understand we are kind of late for time. Heartbreaking to see the Bills lose, but then there's always this. There will be snow tomorrow during the AM rush hour, so your routine, make sure your tires have good tread, drive slowly, and give the same amount of room to nearby cars that the Bills gave to Travis Kelce with 7 seconds left to get to field goal range. Made from a Lakewood Police Department in Lakewood, Colorado, pissed that the Kansas City Chiefs got through to yet another AFC championship.
Hey, I mean, come on, Rabbi. Chiefs Nation freaking was donating to what? One of Josh Allen's favorite charities at $13.
Yeah, but this was the Broncos. This was Colorado that did that. So they're pissed. So go over.
And look,
by the way, introduce yourselves. Guys, introduce yourselves and don't talk before the opening.
Sorry about that. Good evening, everybody. I'm Jay Kaplan.
And I'm Anthony Strait. And that
like it's been your first time on camera, guys. Jesus Christ. Welcome to On the Sports Slides, Conference Championship Edition. All right, so we will not talk overtime tonight. Womp womp. But we will talk everything conference championships and where do the others go from here with Joe Tufaro from Accountable Refs in just a few minutes. But first, a sport whose network can only show old highlights right now. It's true. They cannot talk about any current players. That's baseball. So the Hall of Fame class of 2002 has been finalized with its modern era nominee
2000
winner.
What, Rabbi?
22. I said 22. And after, no, I did. Anyway, after voting, a dynamic baseball legend with a great personality currently on TV who terrorized the AL East for many years has made it to Cooperstown. Unfortunately, the person I actually described, Alex Rodriguez, only got 35% of the vote, but I guess David Ortiz qualifies in this category too. But then there's who isn't in, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. In the cloud of the steroid era, they got bumped up to 66 and 65% respectively in their final year on the ballot, but they're now bumped down to the Today's Game Committee. So Anthony, take us wherever you want to go here, whether it be on the Red Sox Super DH getting in, and hopefully Keaton Thompson attends the Hall of Fame ceremonies for at least a minute or two as part of the speech that way, or Bonds and Clemens staying out.
Look, I'll say this. Congratulations to David Ortiz. Great player, great personality, and not just on the field also, but we remember what happened after the Boston Marathon bombing and his speech that and thankfully was not fined by the FCC or anything like that. But David Ortiz personified the Boston Red Sox, the city of Boston for that matter, and it's great to see him in, but at the same time, I've had mixed feelings about it the last few days because to me, it shows the Baseball Hall of Fame's hypocrisy to an extent. As far as having the baseball writers, some of them have long moved on from the sport itself, still having some kind of influence, and who gets in and who gets out, and somewhat using that voting power to kind of punish fortunately an entire generation of baseball players because of the era that these players just happen to play in. And also, if the Baseball Hall of Fame is supposed to be a historical place that talks about the history of the game, for better or for worse, then how is it that two of the most dominant players in the history of the sport is not in the game and not in the Hall of Fame, even with an asterisk? And I say this because the sport of baseball has always seemingly had an asterisk attached to it in some capacity. You know, you had great players in the 1920s, stories like Babe Ruth, Lou Gehrig. Some of them never played against African-American ball players. So you had Negro League players had great statistics, but never had a chance to play in the majors themselves. And you had guys in the 70s that took amphetamines, and there was like there's never been a moral sense of purity as far as baseball and who gets in. I mean, there was I was reading about one player manager that was part of class 1939 who was a noted racist, and he's still in the Hall of Fame, which is ironic because Major League Baseball celebrates Jackie Robinson every year. So it was my, and the fact that David Ortiz getting in, and there was a cloud of steroid use with him and an alleged failed
and he
drug.
actually tested positive back in 2003 before he kind of became who he was.
And then you think about the fact that Bud Selig, who was the commissioner of baseball during that alleged steroid era, is in the Hall of Fame himself, but the players are the ones being punished. And I just feel that it's almost hypocritical in many ways. And we've seen a couple of years, at least in the last few years, where nobody has actually been voted into the Hall of Fame. So it's just, to me, it feels like the voting process is outdated. Seems like a joke. It means tell me that you can't figure out a way to include some of the greatest players of all time, but put an asterisk to it. Like the Hall of Fame is supposed to be telling the story of the sport. Then you should be able to tell the story, the good and the bad, and let the fans and let people who come to Cooperstown make their own judgment as far as what they think of as far as a great baseball player or even a great person. And there's a lot of great baseball players, but not great individuals who's in the Hall of Fame.
Well, Fred Cobb is in the Hall of Fame, for God's sakes.
Yeah.
And he was not even anywhere near a great person. So
I
what changed from now to then?
Yeah, and I just feel like that the baseball writers are kind of abusing their votes a little bit, and it has a way to punish some of the players from the 90s, the steroid era, if you will. But then we think about McGwire and Sosa being that home run race being such a big part as to baseball revival the lockout. So, like I said, it's a big hypocritical mess all around.
I'm going to let Jay kind of close this out a little bit, but I do want to say very quickly, I was actually thinking exactly how you said that you can't tell the story of the game without all of this stuff that happened. But you also have to think about the numbers. You also have to think about how feared Bonds was back in 92 and 93, even before everything happened. Again, if you ever are at the plate and somebody intentionally walks you with the bases loaded, that is the ultimate honor of anything possible. And I don't care how many steroids you did. Your story needs to be told that that's a Hall of Fame story. Jay, whatever opinion you feel like, you have to understand that the process is definitely outdated and there's just a lot that needs to be told. You can respect the Hall of Fame, but you cannot respect the process at times.
Look, I'll address your comment about process before I get into my my own thoughts on this, and they're kind of wide ranging related to this class and who did and who didn't get in. My pal, and I think I can call him my pal at this point, we've conversed enough, my pal Jason Stark, every year he explains why he votes for who he votes for. And one of the things he talks about, he did a column prior to his ballot explanation, specifically about the guys who are in the PED era, who are, not going to get in, Bonds and Clemens, and who probably won't get in. Guys like McGwire, Sosa, Palmeiro, Ramirez, and maybe even A-Rod. And he said it's tough when you're balancing what the PED era has forced the baseball writers who have a Hall of Fame vote to do is balance on-field performance with off-field performance enhancing, if you will. And he said it's caused a lot of consternation in terms of, when you try to be, the purity police, as you guys are referencing. And with that said, so it has informed the process, and maybe it's polluted the process because it never really should have been part of the process to begin with. Who knows? We'll see where it goes. But let me get into my thoughts. I am not surprised that David Ortiz made it to Cooperstown, though I am surprised it was a first ballot induction. And unlike a lot of people, I don't have a problem with him spending like 88% of his career as a DH. I don't have the prejudice that others may have about that. There are plenty of guys in the Hall of Fame based purely on what they did with the bat, even if they nominally played a defensive position. And nor do I lump Ortiz in with the major PED players. And I'll weigh in on that, more in a moment. Ortiz's numbers and accolades. The guy had a career slash line of 286, 380, 552 with a 931 OPS, 541 home runs, tops that, threshold, if you will. 1,768 RBI, tops the 1,500 RBI threshold. He's a 10-time All-Star, 7-time Silver Slugger, ALCS MVP, World Series MVP, 3-time World Series champ. I mean, those are all indeed Hall-worthy as far as I'm concerned. I just don't know if they rise to the level of being just the 58th player to make it on his first ballot. But if you include the intangibles that Anthony referenced about how he constantly came up big in the postseason for the Red Sox, 17 home runs, 61 RBIs, and a 947 OPS over 85 playoff games. I mean, his World Series slash line across 3 World Series titles, 455, 576, 795 to 1.372 OPS, 3 homers, 14 RBI, leading them to 3 World Series title, plus how he brought the city together in the wake of the Boston Marathon bombing with his "This is our effing city" speech, then yeah, maybe first ballot. As for the PED elephants in the room, Barry Bonds and Roger Clemens. Yeah, as you noted, they both came up short in their 10th and final year on the Baseball Writers Association ballot. And I can't say I'm surprised, nor can I honestly say I'm disappointed. Sure, if you just look at their numbers, even prior to the PED years, both of these guys were on their way to Hall of Fame careers. They had Hall of Fame numbers if their careers had ended before they started down the PED. If they had never played from that point on, yeah, they would probably be in the Hall. And it's something I've said more than once on this show when we've discussed whether Bonds and Clemens were worthy of inclusion in Cooperstown. I've also said that based on their PED-ness and how they've stuck to their denials with all the anecdotal evidence to the contrary, I would never be in favor of them getting plaques. They disrespected the game in a way that to me is up there with how Pete Rose and the 1919 Chicago Black Sox, disrespected the game. Yes, I know there are others who were enshrined who were the epitome of conduct unbecoming during their playing days. Ty Cobb comes to mind. He was the inveterate and unabashed racist that Anthony was referring to, not to mention one of the dirtiest players ever. But times change, society changes, and how and why we hold people accountable has changed. So we look at how these players comported themselves both on and off the field. And I think it should matter when we're talking about immortalizing them, because that's what we're doing here. It's why I don't think Alex Rodriguez or Manny Ramirez should get in. I tar them with the same PED brush as Bonds and Clemens. You can tell the story of the PED era without these guys getting inducted. It's why I hope that the Today's Game era community doesn't vote either of them or vote Curt Schilling in at some point. I tar him with the same conduct unbecoming brush as Cobb. I'm glad he asked for his name to be taken off the ballot. Let's leave him off in perpetuity. To borrow from one of my favorite quotes from Bull Durham, in the scene, Nuke Lelouch asks Crash Davis, "How come you don't like me?" Crash replies, "Because you don't respect yourself, which is your problem, but you don't respect the game, and that's my problem." Those like Bonds, Clemens, A-Rod, Ramirez, Schilling, they disrespected the game, and I have a big problem with that. You should not be allowed into the hallowed halls of Cooperstown if your words or your actions disrespect the national pastime.
I think they're getting in on the players' ballot. At least Bonds and Clemens are based on what they did in their era. So
there's
I
a
think
lot of guys.
There are.
Here's the
there
thing,
are a
though.
lot.
There's a lot of guys, and they can only put 16 guys on their own ballot in any given year, and they meet twice every 5 years. So it may not be this year when they meet again in December.
It probably
Down
won't,
the road,
but
who knows?
Down the road, who knows? But out of that, I think only Bonds and Clemens should be in, just based on what you said before. If they never did PEDs ever again, they would have been in regardless. So that's just my opinion. I agree. Again, like I said, you could love the institution, but the process of how everything has been voted on is severely outdated. And I can't wait to have the Scott Rowland just made the Hall of Fame speech this time next year. He had 63%, and he'll move up definitely. All right.
Well, what's interesting to me, Rabbi, and Jason talked about this in his column, it makes you wonder if the baseball, I don't know if it was the BBWA or the Hall itself, it may have been the Hall that changed the rules, cutting down the amount of time you can spend on the ballot from 15 years
to 10. Yeah.
You got to wonder if those extra 5 years were still a possibility if Clemens and
even if they were, it shouldn't. No, 10 years is perfectly fine. We need, and that might be a reason why we have had very small classes, but we need fresh faces in the hall. All right, football. We welcome back to the show our friend, a contributor to the site Accountable Refs, same name on Twitter. I'll give you the spelling in a moment as Joe works out his camera. And he's here now. We welcome back Mr. Joe Tufaro. Good evening, sir.
How are you guys? What's going on?
How you doing,
We
my
don't
friend?
have
Good to
too-
see you again.
We don't have too much football left. One thing I do want to mention is we have two very good refs doing this weekend's games in Bill Vinovich and Carl Cheffers. Fun fact, they are the last two people to do a Super Bowl. The last time any of those people and any refs who are now retired and on TV worked a Super Bowl was 9 years ago. So
Wow.
that's how the ref, and that'll change this year when Ron Torbert works Super Bowl 56. But it shows that these are the most respected refs out there. So this is a big weekend. All right. Since Joe is here and Jay probably didn't know which championship game went first on Sunday because I wasn't at the production meeting, we're going to go last game first. West Coast bias,
Actually,
baby.
I set up the NFC first, Rabbi, but do what you want.
I know, but you did, but then that goes second. So West Coast bias, baby. 6 out of the last 10 NFC champs have come from the West, and that will include whoever wins this Sunday when the Rams host the Niners for the NFC crown. Even though this is the 4th seed and the 6th seed in this year's NFC playoffs, both are kind of building their own brands. It'll be either 2 Super Bowls in 3 years for the Niners or 2 and 4 for the Rams. San Francisco swept LA during the season, winning 31-10 on Monday Night Football Week 10. And just 3 weeks ago, the Niners won in LA 27-24 in overtime. The Niners would have been out of the playoffs if the Rams just held on to a 17-0 lead. What doesn't kill you? What doesn't kill you? All right. So, Jay, as the Rams go on playing a road game in their stadium this weekend, the Rams, who won the NFC 4 years ago, they enacted a reset at the quarterback position. Since then, Jared Goff out, Matthew Stafford in. He's the reason LA is this close to being able, for the second season in a row, being a team playing in their own confines for the big game. And once again, not necessarily a good thing considering what you're going to see on Sunday when they play San Fran.
So you're gonna set me up?
Yes, I'm talking about Matthew Stafford in the offense. Jesus.
Okay, there we go. I was waiting
Oh
for
my
that
God.
little hook there.
It's called a setup without saying something, Jay.
No need to be subtle with our fans or the
I
rest of
am
this
subtle.
tournament.
That's the point.
All right. So offensive keys for the Rams. As you referenced, Rabbi, the 49ers won both regular season meetings, and we all know the old adage about how hard it is to beat the same team 3 times in a single season. Each of these guys knows the other inside and out. So fixing something that didn't previously work could be the key here. And for the Rams offense, that means on top of Matthew Stafford continuing to play clean, efficient football with a dose of big plays to either or both Cooper Kupp and OBJ in the passing game, they need to have some kind of running game against the 49ers with Cam Akers and Sony Michel, something they were unable to do in the 2 regular season matchups. In the Week 10 loss, the Rams managed just 52 yards on 10 carries with Darrell Henderson leading the team, 31 yards on 5. In the Week 18 loss, the Rams had only 64 yards on 27 carries, with Michel leading the team with only 43 yards on 21 carries. This led to the Rams being a one-dimensional offense relying on Stafford's arm, which allowed the 49ers 4-man pass rush to tee off on the Rams quarterback to the tune of 7 sacks across the 2 games, the most any team had against the Rams this season. The 49ers also held Stafford to only 6.6 yards per attempt, 240 yards per game passing, a 78.6 passer rating, all well below his season numbers, and a 1-to-1 touchdown to interception ratio. He had 4 of each in the 2 games. The Rams rushing attack was 20th in success rate and 18th in DVOA during the regular season. They managed to grind out 140 yards on 38 carries on the ground in the wildcard win over Arizona, but weren't able to do much in the dramatic divisional round over Tampa Bay. Just 73 yards on 30 carries. That's 2.4 a pop, with Cam Akers leading the way with 48 yards on 24 carries. That's 2 yards a pop, gents. Not going to get it done against a 49ers defense that is the number 2 team in the NFL in both success rate and DVOA against the run. If the Rams offense cannot make any type of impact on the ground, And the Packers managed just 67 yards on 20 carries, 3.4 per, against the 49ers in the divisional round. Then not only will Stafford have to play cleanly and efficiently, he'll have to play big. And based on how the 49ers play coverage and rush the passer, he'll have the same challenges he had during the regular season matchups. The 49ers play zone about 72% of the time. That's seventh most in the NFL. Overall, the two regular season games against the Rams, they played zone, primarily cover 3, cover 4, and cover 6, about 69% of the time. Stafford was mortal against the 49ers zone, 63.5% completion, just 5.8 yards an attempt, no TDs, 4 interceptions. When the 49ers ran man coverage in the regular season games, Stafford was immortal. 12 of 14, that's 85.7% completion, 164 yards, 11.7 per attempt, 3 scores, no picks, complete opposite. Overall, Stafford's difference in expected points added per play against man versus zone was the second largest gap among quarterbacks, first against man, ninth against zone. What that means, guys, is that when Stafford sees man coverage or zone coverage or the single high safety look, which will be cover 1 or cover 3, he's number 1 in EPA per play against both of those. He needs to take full advantage and get big plays to Kupp and OBJ. The 49ers gave up 65 plays of 20-plus yards in the regular season, which is tied for 20th. So that plays into a strength of the Rams. They'll need to produce with that strength if they can't generate anything even remotely resembling an NFL-level run game, which basically means they need to do better than the Steelers did all season. The Rams got Stafford to get them back to the Super Bowl. This is the next step. And it comes against a team that I said no one in the NFC would want to play in the playoffs and had the Rams number in the regular season. Will make for a very interesting NFC Championship game, guys.
And Cam Akers needs, number one, Cam Akers needs to hold on to the goddamn football after last week because he almost lost the game. Well, so does, I think Cooper Kupp gets a pass for all of the shit that he did, especially end of the game. I was going to say, Joe, what happens if they blitz 5 again and Cooper Kupp is up the middle? I think I know what the ending of that's going to be. I don't think I need to be a defensive coordinator or a scientist to figure that out. All right, Joe. For the Rams, we have the defense. Are we going to see the Rams beast that really just shut down the Bucs in the first half and, oh my God, made Tom Brady bleed? Oh no! Or are we going to see the almost complete collapse that we saw in the second half?
Yeah, I think it's it's funny against the Tampa team that obviously was missing some offensive linemen, and as we talked about last week, that they would be smarter about how they would handle that, other than the Eagles did, where they actually put guys over the hurt guy and put 2 guys over there. And, even on the first play, they ran a stunt and see what they could do and wound up knocking the backup out of the game. So I think now that they're going up against a full offensive line, supposedly this guy Williams, number 71 in San Francisco, is the best left tackle in football, except he takes a lot of penalties. He's way off the line when he's lined up, which gives him a little bit of a break. And they only call it every now and then for being in the backfield. I didn't see him as being so special, but we'll see how he does. But what we did see last week was, just because your name's Jalen Ramsey and you say, oh, I'll go take the number 1 receiver, it doesn't mean anything's going to happen, because there are guys who are faster than you, and there are guys that can beat you as long as there's a one-on-one situation somewhere. So they continue to roll their coverage. There'll be opportunities for Kittle. There'll be opportunities for Deebo Samuel. There'll be opportunities for the other guys. So I think they have a tougher task this week, obviously, because you're going up against a healthy offensive line. But you are going up against Jimmy Garoppolo versus going up against Tom Brady. And, that is a huge difference to me. I think that Garoppolo is the one quarterback in this group of quarterbacks that are left that have not won a game for their team yet. The driving force behind any of the wins that San Francisco has gotten. It's come defense, it's come running game, it's come Deebo Samuel, whatever he is, whether he's a running back or a wide receiver. But I think they get Kittle more involved this week, and I think that spells a little bit of trouble for the Rams. And just to go back to what you're talking about you probably can't see this on the screen. This is a secondary market ticket site, and there are thousands of that. Well, but what this means is there's thousands and thousands of tickets available in every section. which means the Rams fans are going unless somebody pays $1,500 for their seat, which is very LA-like. The makeup of that $800, they'll go watch it on another big screen TV instead of watching it on the one in front of their face, because if you're in that upper level, you can't see the field anyway. So I think that whole issue with, they were only going to sell the people who lived in LA, and of course that wouldn't have worked out very well legally. I think they're going to be well represented. I think that those fans were excited to be there against Arizona. I think it's going to be a fun, either way, it's going to be a fun atmosphere in that stadium. But I think that the Rams defense doesn't have it as easy this week. And I think they're going to give up a lot more yardage. And again, Stafford is tougher than Tom Brady. We should say.
Hey, he out Brady last week.
Yeah, no, that was.
He played much better. He played a much more clean game. Believe it.
Brady was terrible, and we'll talk about this later, I know. But Brady was so bad in the first half that they had to give him opportunities in the second half to get back in, which is what they did. They handed him to him. But I know Rabbi was very happy to see my man Sean Hockley not only throw the flag for the.
I thought he did an amazing job during that game, by the way. But I just said, give him a Super Bowl immediately.
Not only did he say, obviously, things that Sean didn't want to hear at the moment, but he did bump him as he went by, because you can see the umpire come wrong. This can't happen, because we're not going to throw him out of the game. And you can actually see the umpire in the background come running to the confrontation, like, okay, guys, let's move on, because we're not going to do anything. And again, it's sad that NBC has to show the close-up 6 times of his lip and make a big deal about it. And it was a little bit, to me, it made him look worse than make him look better, that he was crying.
Well, you know what? Anything that makes him look worse is probably
the fact that he bit his own lip and wanted to blame it on Bob.
It was a little bit of an over-exaggeration. But again, the fact that Tom Brady had never been called for an unsportsmanlike penalty in the playoffs, considering how many playoff matchups he's had, is just insane. All right, my turn. Jimmy Garoppolo. And I'm not allowed to talk bad about Jimmy Garoppolo in this segment, or Jeff Garcia will come and tweet at us at some way, shape, and form and telling us, have you ever played quarterback before? And the answer is no. I have not played quarterback before. And I am going to defend Pretty Jimmy to the depths of hell right now. So here's what I'm going to do. I got to say this. In the two games versus the Rams, Garoppolo played excellent. And I think one thing you have to realize is he got the ball out so quickly. And that's going to be key when you're going up against the law firm of Donald and Miller on Sunday. 2.29 seconds in those 2 games, in his 2 regular season meetings. And the man threw for 316 in a game where he was playing with pretty much a broken thumb for the first time since he had a torn ligament in his thumb. He went through for 316 and was clutched down the stretch. I think the one thing you have to worry about Jimmy G is his propensity to throwing INTs. You have seen times like in the end of that first half, he almost basically cost the game for the 49ers, throwing that INT late in the first half that could have at least made it 7-3. And then the Packers kick a field goal, it's 10-0. In that weather, the 49ers are not always built to come from behind. And they needed that special teams miscue for everything to happen. But Joe said it perfectly. Kittle's going to be more involved this week. Kittle was involved very much on that final drive. You can do whatever you want with Deebo Samuel. He is the true mix and match guy. You can almost expect 75 all-purpose yards at any point during the game. I will have to say, though, that this team, the Niners, can actually do so many different things that Shanahan wants to do. And Jay has said it perfectly. I've given Garoppolo my shit, but Jay said it perfectly. When the chips were down and you needed to make a drive, Rodgers didn't do it. It was 3 minutes plus left, and Jimmy G did. And so that's the one thing you have to realize with Jimmy G. He is a better quarterback than I think he was 2 years ago, when it almost seemed like the 49ers were hiding him behind a brick wall because they didn't really respect the opponents that they were playing during the playoffs. And now the 49ers do, and they're allowing Jimmy Garoppolo to do more stuff. And he's going to look very handsome doing it on Sunday. And he might bring his team to more Super Bowls than Aaron Rodgers has brought his team to. And isn't that going to be something? It's not always about the quarterback. It's a quarterback-driven league, but the fact that we are going to see Matthew Stafford or Jimmy Garoppolo in the Super Bowl makes you think that sometimes it's about the team you build around them as well. All right, Anthony, your turn. We're seeing the impact of a healthy Niners defense, and dare I say, almost historic impact.
Yeah, well, one thing is the 49ers could care less about Aaron Rodgers' vaccination status, as we saw Saturday night. But
it's him against the world, Anthony.
Oh no! I mean, yeah,
That's why everybody was up against.
Yeah, we all wanted to watch them lose, whatever. Anyway, look, it didn't start out well for the 49ers defense. The Packers marched downfield. They didn't have an answer for Devontae Adams early on in the game. He was seemingly getting open and well. They gave up a touchdown, but after that, 3 points on offense. The 49ers defense clamped down. I mean, 5 sacks. You think about they shut down Aaron Jones, only 41 yards and 12 carries, and held Aaron Rodgers to a pedestrian 225, which is not bad, but certainly not spectacular. Certainly not Aaron Rodgers level stats. But also you think about the 49ers and the fact that they were able to keep, no matter how bad the offense played, the defense rose to the challenge, particularly on third down. Where they were able to get a couple of sacks. Eric Armstead has been a big part of this 49ers defense really the last month. I mean, he's had 5 sacks over the last month. His sack actually led to that punt block that was taken back in for a touchdown that tied the game. He had 2.5 sacks against the Rams in Week 18. So obviously he's a key factor to his pass rush, along with a healthy Nick Bosa, and also turnovers. And Matthew Stafford, he threw 2 interceptions against the 49ers now Week 18 matchup, and particularly in overtime that ended the game and put the 49ers into the playoffs. It's just that the 49ers are 11-3 when they forced at least 1 turnover, and obviously the punt block that led to a touchdown counts as a turnover as well. And they're just 1-4 when they don't force any. So when you have a struggling offense, and obviously Jimmy Garoppolo, he's been erratic. I'll stand with Mina comments on that one. He's been erratic, and there aren't too many people that would tell you the 49ers are winning because of him. But if you want to help a struggling offense, it's to give them a short field, and the 49ers being able to force takeaways and to force a couple of mistakes. And we saw late in that game against Tampa Bay, the Rams have a hard time holding on to the football. The 49ers, they can just set up some short fields and help the offense out a little bit in that regard. It could really bode well for the 49ers on Sunday. And not to mention, they'll have a pseudo home field advantage because half that stadium is going to be filled with 49er fans anyway. I mean, I don't know if the Rams forgot that 49er fans live in Southern California also, and the fact that you haven't had a team for almost 30 years beforehand. Who do you think they voted for? I mean, just think. I didn't understand.
The Raiders.
Yeah. Well, I mean, who? Really?
That was Oakland. That was Oakland,
okay?
Oakland's LA. Come on now.
Oakland's his own entity at this point compared to Los Angeles. But yeah, the 49ers defense is all about pressure. It's all about getting to Matthew Stafford. And also it's going to be about creating some opportunities and being opportunistic on defense. Get some turnovers and helping the offense out by getting them a short field.
I think Mark Davis is now thinking after a 10-year run in Las Vegas, where can I move the Raiders to next? Their fan base.
They are a peripatetic bunch, aren't they?
Anyway, yeah, Jimmy G, not a great quarterback, but I expect some things this weekend. Again,
he's got great hair, though. He's got great hair, but he's not a great quarterback.
He's the prettiest quarterback that ever didn't complete a pass until the second half, or the second quarter of a game. All right, now For the fourth time in a row, the AFC road goes through contractually obligated to say its real name, GEHA Field at Arrowhead Stadium. God damn it, I hate that too. Anyway, the Chiefs with Patrick Mahomes at his fullest possible Megatron what the fuck form host the upstart Cincinnati Bengals. A month ago came a huge Week 17 win for Cincy that the baby Bengals won 34-31 on a last-second field goal, even though they almost gave it up on a 4th and 1 when all they needed to do was kick a field goal to make it that way with 30 seconds left. But then after you see the Bills game, you're like, oh, maybe that was the right choice. Anyway, that won them the AFC North. And now, Cincy, all you got to do is do it again in KC, and then they go to their first big game in 34 years. Easy peasy. Jay, the Chiefs are just back humming on all cylinders. And after last week's masterpiece against Buffalo, there's got to be something left for an encore, right?
Well, Rabbi, first and foremost, it's the AFC Norris. Give Boomer his respect.
I will not give Boomer his respect in any way, shape, or form.
The Chiefs' offense that we've seen in their 2 playoff wins over the Steelers and the Bills is the juggernaut that we've become so used to seeing since Patrick Mahomes took over as starting quarterback. We saw Patrick Mahomes having Patrick Mahomes games, doing Patrick Mahomes things, and Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce being uncoverable and wrecking secondaries every which way en route to back-to-back 42-point performances. Wash, rinse, repeat is pretty much the key for the KC offense in this game. It really is that simple, guys, because this fully operational Death Star is more than capable of it. The Chiefs offense is second in the NFL in DVOA, first in EPA per drive, and first in success rate. And they're going from facing a Bills defense that was first in just about everything: DVOA, EPA per play, success rate, first in yards, first in points allowed, actually second in success rate, to a Bengals defense that is 19th in DVOA, 12th in EPA per drive, 13th in success rate, 17th in scoring, and 18th in yards allowed. Rabbi, you referenced the Week 17 win by the Bengals against KC, a game that was very much a whomever had the ball last kind of matchup, and it was the Chiefs' only loss in their 9-1 run to end the season. The offense still managed to do pretty much whatever it wanted in that game. Mahomes, 26 of 35, that's 74.3% completion, 259 yards, 7.4 per attempt, 2 scores, no picks, 113.9 passer rating. The running game, 155 yards on 23 carries, that's 6.7 a carry, with 2 scores of their own, led by running back Darrell Williams, 88 yards on 14 carries, 6.3 per tote, and those 2 touchdowns. No one talks about it, guys, but the Chiefs' rushing attack is very efficient. 8th in success rate, 10th in DVOA. So making Mahomes hand off doesn't really improve your chances of beating Kansas City. Mahomes had all day to throw against the Bengals in that regular season matchup, since he had 0 sacks and only 4 quarterback hits. Blitzing him didn't work either. 3 for 4 for 81 yards against it. Not really surprising, as Mahomes ranked 2nd in the NFL in EPA per play against the blitz, and his offensive line was 2nd in win rate, 10th in pressure rate, and 3rd in sack rate. Now, here's another thing to keep in mind. Talked about the running game. Neither Jerick McKinnon nor Clyde Edwards-Helaire played in that Week 17 loss. That loss, Tyreek Hill had only 40 yards on 6 catches, nothing longer than 17. Kelce, 5 catches for 25. Neither one of those guys got into the end zone, and yet it took a last-second field goal for the Bengals to escape with that W. Look, we all know what those 4 players have done so far in the postseason, and we know how the Chiefs are at Arrowhead in the playoffs, especially since the start of the Mahomes-Reid era. And look, as good as the Bengals' offense is, if the Chiefs' offense keeps playing like they have, all they need is an average game from their defense, and they'll rep the AFC in the Super Bowl for the 3rd straight year.
Fully operational Death Star. Whoever thought that KC would go back to being a... By the way, EPA is expected points allowed, not the Environmental Protection Agency,
Yes.
as I thought of at the beginning of the year. So just wanted to make sure I was doing that. All right, Joe. Mr. Burrow is probably not getting sacked 9 times by this Chiefs defense, but they need to pressure Joe faster, despite turning into the Bills game that was last week. Last team with the ball wins the game, or that Bengals game in Week 17. Last team with the ball wins the game. And I don't know if the Chiefs fans' hearts can actually take that for a second straight week.
No, they can't.
Yeah, and what did we say last week? We said the Chiefs defense plays exactly like the offense. They give up the same amount of yardage, they give up the same amount of points, the same amount of time of possession. It's like a mirror image of themselves. They're awful at times. They give up big chunk plays. I mean, they lost the game 3 times last week in the last 2.5 minutes.
Yes, they did.
So, you just can't rely on them for anything, and that's why you have to just keep going if you're the Chiefs. And the thing I enjoyed about last week was both coaches not calling timeouts like 2 minutes into the third quarter to get your punter on the field. Both of them having 3 timeouts within the last 2 minutes of that game was the difference altogether. Because no matter how many times Tony Romo can yell, "Oh, you can end the game here. You can end the game here. This is it. This is the biggest play." You go, Tony, they have 3 timeouts. They could go for another 5.5 minutes if they want. They could have 3, and they wind up having 4 possessions. Might have 2 possessions each inside 2 minutes. So doing that at that point is just so smart. But the Chiefs defense just, guys falling down in the secondary. If they have to play DeAndre Baker because guys get hurt, they just are not very good at that point, and they're going to again. But again, you have that offense on the other side that saves you. And I don't think that as good as Joe Burrow has shown and as good as Jamar Chase is, I don't think they have more supporting cast than that to outscore Mahomes and that crazy offense that they have. So if it does come down to it, again, if the Chiefs defense plays like the Chiefs offense and just gives up boatloads of yards and leaves guys running through the middle of the field wide open, it'll be the same thing. It'll be whoever has the ball last. Hopefully the special teams coach knows that maybe you kick it to the 5-yard line and not in the end zone and waste 5 or 6 seconds. And you don't have to defend the end zone when the other team just, you kind of need to cover those guys. And, to me, the biggest mistake of the whole week was on the last play when in regulation time, and they just needed to get close enough for a field goal. You have the 4 wide receivers are next to the tackles. They're standing right there. And there's guys that were going to rush Mahomes, and they never touch the wide receivers or they never touch Kelsey. They just go right to rush the quarterback. All you need to do is hold those guys up. There's 8 seconds to go in the game. Hold them up for a few seconds and make the timing of the play go off, and then you're done, no matter what they're doing. So, but again, getting back to the point, I just don't think that this Chiefs defense, they're not going to get 9 sacks. I think it's who's got the ball last and who's more efficient, and can Joe Burrow continue his magical run and get converting 4th down after 4th down after 4th down and moving the ball down the field.
The fact of the matter is this, though, that offensive line was so porous last week that the next 100 picks that the Bengals should use in the NFL draft should be on offensive linemen. They should move up to whatever spot has the best offensive lineman, because their offensive lineman, we talked last week about the 52 sacks Burrow had during the regular season. And Joe Burrow, as we talked about the offense, I mentioned it too. Let's not go credit for credit here. We are a team. Talked about the 52 sacks that they had during the regular season, and then 9 sacks last week, which is by far the most a quarterback has been sacked ever in a playoff game, and they still won. In fact, I believe I said the stat, 12 teams in NFL history had only won when being sacked 9 times. But I will mention this to go into my rant, and I will take this directly from what Jay texted us on Sunday. Only 3 of the 9 sacks on those 9 sacks came on 3rd down, and as of the other 6, Joe Burrow's next play was a pass, and he was 6 for 6 for 52 yards. And that's why Joe Burrow this week has been mentioned in the same category with all of the others, because Joe Burrow does Joe Burrow things when Joe Burrow wants to do them. Joe has had an amazing run in his last few weeks. And yeah, that Kansas City game was a game where whoever got the ball last did it. But remember, in that second half, the Chiefs only scored 3 points. The Bengals had to come back from 3 14-point deficits. And that's going to be a very interesting thing. And I think the other thing is going to be, even though they only scored 19 points last week, all of the Bengals' primary weapons did the same thing they did the week before against the Raiders when they were a little more efficient. Chase went for 100 yards again, the first rookie to do so. Higgins had a good game. Uzama had a very good game and is always, again, the best weapon inside of the 20 for them, and that's been good. And Mixon scored a touchdown. Didn't have a good game on the ground otherwise, but Mixon you use in both ways. I will say this, if the offensive line can hold Joe Burrow up for more than 5 seconds, and again, that's still a big if because the Titans had a perfect blitzing plan against him last week and it still didn't work. They're going to have to watch Jamar Chase. 266 yards in the game in week 17. Jamar has had a pretty damn good rookie year. He finished 5th in the league in receiving, is going to win the offensive player of the year. He kind of snagged that award out of Mac Jones's hand in the last few weeks of the season. But again, I think Cincinnati is going to probably have to win this game and win this game. They're not winning at 19-14. Now, with that said, watch them win 19-14 or lose 19-14. It's going to be you score once, we score once. You score once, we score once. And I think the Bengals are perfectly fine with getting that game back to the way it was week 17 because a team with nothing to lose at this juncture is the most dangerous, and the Cincinnati Bengals have nothing to lose. Yes, it was 1916. I completely understand that, but I whatever. Anyway, nothing to lose. The Bengals are ready and willing to do whatever they can to make the Super Bowl. Their offense is going to have to be the key part. Okay, Anthony, the Titans defense, the offense is what we would describe as a beat up Pinto. The Chiefs are the definition of what we describe as a Maserati. How did the Bengals have anywhere near last week's performance?
Yeah, the Bengals in the AFC Championship game. All we need is Icky Woods and a Sam White quote, and we'd be ready to go. But look, the Bengals pretty much they played well the last 2 weeks, but the Raiders offense and the Titans offense aren't exactly the Kansas City Chiefs. So, defensive coordinator, the defensive coordinator Lou Anarumo, said it best. They got out forced field goals, and it's more of a bend but don't break mentality that the Bengals defense is going to have to play against Kansas City. Look, Kansas City is explosive. They have way too many weapons to speak of. But as you mentioned, Rabbi, in that previous matchup, they were held to 3 points in the second half. I can see Cincinnati playing a lot of cover 2, cover 3. They want to kind of make Patrick Mahomes kind of throw the ball a little more underneath and try to take away as many of the Chiefs' big play offense as possible. And also, you look at the fact like this: the Bengals do have a good pass rush. You know, you think about DJ Reader and Trey Hendrickson leading that pass rush, so they can get to the quarterback. However, this is Patrick Mahomes, and we saw Buffalo having a hard time. It was literally like watching Wyatt Cody chase the road runner and still not getting him, despite all the traps being laid in sack. Cincinnati, they don't, I mean, for what it's worth, the secondary has played a lot better. Eli Apple, remember that name, actually has played well this postseason. It was his tip that led to the interception that eventually set up the game-winning field goal for Cincinnati to knock off Tennessee. But even if you take away the fact that Cincinnati did force 3 turnovers, they're going to have to figure out a way to slow down Kansas City, but they're not going to shut them down completely. So it's a bend but don't break approach. You give up all the yards in between the 20s, but then when we get to the 20s, you're trying to tighten things up and force field goals instead of touchdowns. Because I feel like Kansas City's offense is just too good at home, no less, to be training touchdown for touchdown. And when I watch the Bengals, my concern isn't really the offense as much as it's the defense. And can they slow Kansas City offense up enough to allow Joe Burrow and that offense to kind of dictate the game and put points on without having to feel like they have to be in a shootout. So it's going to be interesting. Again, last week, we didn't think they would slow down the Titans running game because they had a hard time stopping a run. They were able to do that to enough to win the game and really put it on the hands of Ryan Tannehill. And obviously, I'll talk about the Titans a little more in the next segment. But Cincinnati really just gonna have to try to hang in there defensively. Like neither of these I'm with Joe. Neither of these defenses are spectacular and great. It's just a matter of who can get enough stops to allow their offense to kind of take over the game. And I wouldn't be surprised if there's a shootout, no less. But if you're Cincinnati, you'll trade 13 for 18 and 98 yards for Patrick Mahomes and no touchdowns compared to whatever the heck the Bills were doing late in that fourth quarter and giving a big play after big play any day of the week.
Which apparently, according to you, no other team would do with 13 seconds on the clock, but we will get into that in a little bit. One thing I do have to say,
many days I went wrong.
I know
with the
we've
Bills.
talked about this whole week. Okay. One thing I do want to say though is, by the way, Bills, I think their biggest problem is keeping their quarterback upright because Joe Burrow probably needs like a night's protection right now to avoid an injury the way that his offensive line olays the rest of the defense. And also, Eli Apple, you're playing Kansas City this week. You do not need to badmouth New York and New Orleans in the media. No one asked you your opinion about New York and New Orleans. And just you're playing Kansas City this week. Whatever happened to giving the team bulletin board material?
The greatest part of Sean Payton's 2-hour retirement speech was when he said, I root for all the guys who used to play here and now we're playing for championships. I root for so-and-so, I root for so-and-so. And he waited a little bit and he goes, I root for Eli a little.
Good man.
Yeah.
Good man. That's a very good quote. All right. Finally, we have come not here to bury the teams whose championship aspirations died this weekend. Actually, in the case of we are here to bury them. We were one Bills correct coin toss, and don't you tell me otherwise, from seeing all the 1s and 2s seeds saying bye-bye in what was the most thrilling weekend we've ever had in playoff history. So let's dissect things in order. Let's go to 4:35 p.m. on Saturday and talk about the Tennessee Titans, Anthony, actually around like 7:50 when Evan McPherson called his shot and hit a 52-yard game-winning field goal. The balls on that man saying, we're going to the AFC Championship right before he hit the kick. It's perfect. Anthony, what's next for the Tennessee Titans? Surprise one seed, not a surprise bouncing.
No, well, here's the thing, though. I mean, they've won 11 games and 12 games, respectively, the last 2 years, and the biggest drawback has been at quarterback. So one of the questions going into the offseason is going to be, is Ryan Tannehill the guy? He's going to be 34 going the next season. He did not play well at all. He threw 3 interceptions. His first pass was an interception. His first pass in the second half was an interception. And his last pass in the afternoon or early evening was an interception. And you start the one, and Tannehill did not had a bit of a down year this year. I don't know how much of Derrick Henry's injury had to do with it, but the Titans were still top 10 in rushing. And when you have a quarterback that's so reliant on one aspect of the offense working so well to set up everything else, that could be a bit of a problem. And we talked about Jared Goff earlier in the show and being such his success being so tied to the play action offense. If you take away the running game, what do you do as a quarterback? I mean, can you win the game yourself? Can you read the defense very well? And Tannehill has struggled with play selection and reading the defense. That's going to be one of the problems. The offensive line may need to have to be reshuffled a little bit. They also Harold Landry led the team with 12 sacks. They don't have the money. Can they bring him back in some capacity? We got a lot of young wide receivers that are kind of waiting in the range. So it's hard to talk about a 12-win team as a failure, as a 1 seed. But this is back-to-back years that the Titans have lost their first playoff game at home, and this is after that surprising run to the AFC Championship game 2 seasons ago. And it's the third time in the franchise history that they were a 1 seed and lost their very first playoff game, get back to 2000 and 2008 respectively. So Tennessee has a lot of question marks. And Mike Vrabel, he said that no one player is going to be blamed for everything. But, I mean, if Ryan Tannehill plays even remotely better, doesn't turn the ball over, who knows? Maybe talk about Tennessee kind of going to Arrowhead and seeing how they mash up. But
would have been the other way, by the way. Tennessee would have hosted the AFC Championship.
Yeah, Tennessee would have actually hosted the championship game. So there's a lot of questions, but the quarterback position is definitely going to be the biggest question mark going into next season for the Tennessee Titan team that had everything set up for them. You win one game, you got the championship game at home. Who knows?
I think one of the important things though too is I think Henry coming back almost hurt them because they decided that he was going to be the main guy for the day. And you can see he wasn't healthy. He wasn't as strong as he had been when he's himself. And you went away from the guy who took his place that when you runs. And then you put Henry back in and he did nothing a few times. So I think that whole thing of like with Dallas when they played Elliott instead of Pollard, when you play this guy, just because he's your big guy and he came back and he says I'm healthy, he obviously wasn't 100%. And the other guy got less carries because of that, and I think that hurt them.
Should have been a timeshare. Should have been a complete timeshare. That would have been the way that it worked out. If Foreman had a big game during that game, and Derrick Henry couldn't convert 2 4th and 1s, and that is the other reason why a guy like Tannehill had to throw more at the time.
And Foreman was way more explosive in that game too when he was actually getting the carries. I just felt like maybe they probably could have went to him a little more. Henry clearly wasn't 100%, and it was also hesitant on a few runs too, which should have been a sign for Mike Vrabel that maybe Foreman should have been the guy getting the majority of the carries, and maybe Henry spelled him instead of the other way around.
All right, Jay, in the court case of Aaron Rodgers versus the world, the jury has found that the world has actually won. Aaron Rodgers, the first ever player to lose 4 times to a single opponent in his playoff career. The San Francisco 49ers are definitely their daddies. So what's next for the team with the best record?
Rabbi, are you saying that they own him?
Oh, they do.
Ooh.
Oh, they do. I guess by proximity, the 49ers also own the Bears. Anyway, what's next for the team with the best record of the regular season in Green Bay?
This will go down as one of Aaron Rodgers' most epic fails. I mean, an MVP-worthy season, best record in the NFC at 13-4, home field advantage on the frozen tundra of Lambeau, where most California teams go to have their postseason dreams turn into nightmares. And this is how it ends. Not with a bang, but a whimper. And now, as you said, that 0-4 record in the playoffs against his hometown team, whom he said would regret not drafting him. Yeah, I know. Green Bay special teams were anything but special and deserve the lion's share of the blame for sending the Packers into the offseason a lot earlier than we thought. But considering that the unit was the NFL's worst, they were ranked 32nd in DVOA, it's not totally surprising that they hurt the team's chances. Though, I guess being directly responsible for costing the Packers a field goal and giving the 49ers their only touchdown of the game was as heinous as it gets, especially in a playoff game. That all being said, Rodgers and one of the NFL's best offenses not showing up at all is pretty glaring. Rodgers admitted he didn't have a great night, and it sums it up as he was pretty pedestrian for Aaron Rodgers, 20 of 29, 69% completion, 225 yards, 7.8 per attempt. No scores, no picks, 91.9 passer rating. Not bad if you're expected to be a game manager. Not great if you're expected to play at an MVP level in order to avoid having your season come to an end somewhere other than the Super Bowl. Rodgers was sacked 5 times, pressured 11 times. That's a 32.4 pressure rate, highest rate Rodgers has been pressured in any game this season. The man directed 10 drives that resulted in 10 points. The first one, as you guys talked about, went 69 yards in 10 plays, put a 7 on the board. The 8th went 57 yards in 14 plays, and they settled for a 33-yard field goal. The 6 drives in between resulted in a fumble, 4 punts, the blocked field goal at the end of the first half. They had 2 fourth-quarter drives, managed 6 plays for minus 15 yards, had 2 punts, 1 blocked. That is not getting it done. But, I mean, think about it, guys. This has become the narrative for Rodgers of late. He puts up video game numbers in the regular season and then is so underwhelming when it matters most in the playoffs since being named Super Bowl MVP almost 11 years ago. Rodgers commended the 49ers for, quote, getting me off my spot which with how they took away the quick strike passing game that I talked about on the previous show and how that had worked so well for the Packers this season, and also how the 49ers consistently collapsed the Green Bay pocket. The Packers have some holes to shore up, especially on special teams. But the question that would be the looming cloud over the offseason is, what will Aaron Rodgers decide to do about his future? Is this simply the painful end of his season, or is it the end of his time in Green Bay, or even the NFL? The Packers are more than $40 million over the cap, so the roster may look dramatically different next season, and it may not be a contender. Rodgers is at least somewhat aware of this and has flatly stated, quote, "I don't want to be part of a rebuild if I'm going to keep playing," end quote. Devontae Adams has an expiring contract. First-team All-Pro linebacker Devondre Campbell will be an unrestricted free agent, as will be cornerback Russell Douglas, tight end Robert Tonyan, wide receiver Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and others who are why the Packers were the NFC's best team this season. Who comes back and who doesn't will likely be a huge factor in Rodgers' decision. I said it on the last show, and here's my quote. Aaron Rodgers needs to play like the MVP I said he should be on our January 8th show to give Green Bay a shot at ending their current 4-game losing streak in the NFC Championship game. Anything less and the rumors will start flying that his time in the frozen tundra may be over, end quote. Let the rumors begin, and they already have. Body wasn't even cold, Rabbi, and the rumors were flying around.
So wait a minute. It wasn't the liberal left that shut him up. It was the 49ers defense all along. Who knew?
Yep.
Welcome to Pittsburgh, Aaron. Welcome to Pittsburgh. Anyway.
He's not coming to
what's
Pittsburgh.
Going to happen to Aaron Rodgers this offseason is going to be very, very interesting.
And we'll be here to tell you all about it.
I know. We're gonna hear it like it's a freaking narrative that is going on the audiobook, one slow chapter at a time. I think so. Anyway, Joe, for only the third time in Tom Brady's career, his season has ended in the divisional round. Rumors have been circulating, and it might be the end for Tom Brady. Who the hell is going to win the NFC next year if all of these quarterbacks are leaving? Is this it for the Bucs?
Yeah, I thought they made the mistake last year of, hey, let's bring everybody back and put them in the same spot, and everybody will play exactly the same, and we'll coach exactly the same, and we'll beat all the same teams, and we'll just walk in. And we got lucky last year to get hot at the end of the season because we were pretty awful in the beginning of the season, but we'll just put it all together.
7-5 going in down past the bye.
Exactly, and had a chance to lose to the Giants on a 2-point conversion, and we're very, very poor last year. So I'm not sure why you wanted to recreate that, but they did. They came back. The defense looked awful in the first half against the Rams. Pierre-Paul, who had said to have played, looked like he was checked out for the first half and didn't bother to show up. There was just nothing there. And for Tom Brady to have to throw the ball 54 times, you're doing something wrong. But it also means Leonard Fournette was hurt. All the other guys weren't there. Gronkowski's getting old. You know, they can still play for a half here and a quarter there, but the two of them are pretty much shot at this point. And, you know, again, the whole thing was, if you put any kind of pressure on him, he always folds. And to get to the point where he cracked a little bit mentally when Von Miller hugged him and he went complaining to everybody that he got hit late and I got hit in the face and this stuff. And even the guys on TV couldn't find it. They're like, well, I guess he kind of touched him a little bit, and you know, for it, and just doesn't look good. You know, again, he's able to, when you make a mistake against Tom Brady, he's going to take advantage of it. When you get one-on-one with Mike Evans, I'm gonna be able to throw the ball to him, and I'm gonna be able to complete that pass. He's not going to miss those throws. He's still good at that point, but he's not like these other guys. He's not like Patrick Mahomes. He's not a person who can improvise a lot at this point. And he's gonna lose. Maybe he's gonna lose Byron Leftwich. He may lose. Who knows who else is gonna be there? They don't have a lot of wide receivers. They don't have a lot of talent on that team. A lot of guys keep getting hurt. To me, I think he should go. I don't think he's the type that wants to go out losing. That's always going to be the way you go out, because you're not going to keep winning. So once you get to that point, you might want to say, hey, I've done whatever I can, and this is what I'm going to do. you want to go out. Everybody wants to go out like Strahan went out, like Favre went out, like Elway went out. It just doesn't happen. And, maybe last year was the year he should have just said, hey, this is why I came here, to play with a different team and show that I could bring them and that they were ready. And again, if you guys remember, we talked about when Eli was no longer going to be the starter for the Giants. We all went around the room and said, what team would you go to if you could go anywhere? And we all came up with Tampa Bay. Great defense, wide receivers, good coaching staff. So that's all they were looking for, was a guy who could play the position a lot better than Jameis Winston, which isn't all that difficult. So that was the point, was I'm going to get away from Belichick. I'm going to show that I can win without him. You did it. You should have left last year, and that would have been the end of the conversation. Now you're going to be, am I going to play when I'm 45? I mean, you're already older than everybody. You've already done everything. You can't beat the Giants. You're not going to get that chance again because we're not going to be there. So that's going to be your legacy as far as we are concerned, that you couldn't beat Eli Manning and you couldn't beat Tom Kaplan. So just go to the sunset, because it's not going to happen. You're not going to get the chance.
And Tom Coughlin definitely is not coming in out of retirement in any way, shape, or form. The only reason I would say Tom Brady is still going to play is, look, the quarterback position is the most scrutinized position now, probably in all of American sports. And there are not enough good quarterbacks to play the position. That's why there were rumors of Drew Brees getting calls from the Saints when Jameis Winston got hurt. That's why Jameis Winston has a starting job to begin with, because I can't name you 20 other quarterbacks that can start for them. So it's not great in that position. And I think the Bucs are
also, yeah. And like we said, we've talked about the draft this year with there being nobody, the number one quarterback is.
There's nobody who's worthy, but I feel like there's going to be people like Pickett that's going to go into a starting role, and he might have the tools to be a starter. And we'll talk about that when we get to the draft. But like I said, quarterback position is highly scrutinized, and there's not enough people who play that position right now. Josh Allen is one of the best quarterbacks in the league. He can 100% play that position. But what's next for Buffalo after, honestly, a demoralizing loss, in my opinion, to the Chiefs on Sunday? You can take your head and say we played as good as the Chiefs did on their home field. But I think the fact of the matter is they're always going to remember the fact that they kicked it for a touchback instead of letting a few seconds run off the clock. They're always going to remember some of the bad calls that he did. Me and Anthony have been arguing about this for days. There were some bad calls in that final drive. I'm not necessarily blaming the players. I'm more or less blaming Leslie Frazier for the calls that he just ran the lane. The middle was never really taken into account, and they kind of just wanted to avoid the deep ball, and they didn't realize that 25 plus 15 equals 40, and 40 yards from the 25 equals a much better field goal kick. And as we saw, like this past weekend, kickers have ice in their veins. All games ended, or their regulation ended, on a game-winning or game-tying kick. But I also want to look at the fact that Buffalo's wide receiving core, the maturation of Buffalo, they're going to be here for years to come. Josh Allen, you couldn't have played any better than he played in the first two playoff games, having 9 touchdowns and I believe no interceptions. And I believe he was only 2 touchdowns away from the record for a season for a playoffs for touchdowns with 11, something that Patrick Mahomes now with 8 is probably going to get to in the AFC Championship game. What I do want to focus on is the fact that the combination of the Bills wide receivers did very good, but where was Stephon Diggs? Only 1 catch for 9 yards. And yes, we can mention the fact that Gabriel Davis had 4 touchdowns, the first wide receiver to ever catch 4 touchdowns in a playoff game. We can mention the fact that Beasley was doing his thing, bringing his team down the field. But Stephon Diggs, whose best play was a tackle of an intruder that was on the field, being his own security late during that Chiefs game, needed to step up. And for a guy who was literally sitting there last year, watching the Chiefs celebrate their AFC Championship, giving himself the motivation that he can do this, he sheltered up like a turtle in that game. Yes, the Chiefs brought a lot of their attention to Bills, which allowed Gabriel Davis to get open. But you need to do better than that because you could have possessed the ball a little more. The rushing game was still inconsistent, and the big rushing player for that team was Allen in that game. So Diggs needs to kind of work on some of his big game skills. Not a lot wrong with this team, though. It's not a hard division. They know they can beat the Patriots now. They really know they can beat the Patriots now after their wild card win at Buffalo. Very curious to see what the future of this team is in 2022. They're probably going to be co-AFC favorites in my book because they really should be. They built a really good organization. They're going to lose Dayball probably. They might lose Frazier. They've already lost their assistant GM, Joe Shane, to the Giants. This Bills team has built a nice little culture. Now, just like the Bills of the mid-90s, it's time to take one more step. All right. Before we go tonight, today also enters the end of the career of Steelers quarterback Ben Roethlisberger. We knew it was coming for weeks, but today Ben made it official. 3 conference championships and 2 Super Bowls later, he's made our resident and unreplaceable only because I can't find a Steeler fan that I know anywhere near here. So that's the only reason why we have him is there in that conversation. Our Steeler fan is a happy man now. So Jay, the floor is yours about Big Ben.
Thanks. As you said, Rabbi, those of us who follow and cover the Steelers have pretty much known since training camp that Big Ben was likely going to call it a career after this season. We were just waiting for him to make it officially official as he did today. He retires as the franchise leader in wins, passing yards, passing TDs, attempts, completions, and completion percentage. The passing yards, attempts, and completions are all 5th most in NFL history. Those TD passes are tied for 7th most. 6 Pro Bowls, offensive rookie of the year in 2004 when he went 13-0 after replacing Tommy Maddox at quarterback, leading the NFL in passing yards in both 2014 and 2018. Those 3 Super Bowls and 2 Lombardi trophies that he brought home that turned Pittsburgh into Sixburgh. He never experienced a losing season in his career and is one of 12 quarterbacks to win 2 Super Bowls. Only 4 have won more than 2. Yeah, the numbers are all Canton-worthy, and I have zero doubt that he'll don the gold jacket on the first ballot. But what I'll remember is what he was able to do with his arm and earlier in his career with his legs, how he made big play after big play with pass rushers draped all over him, especially in the 4th quarter when he played backyard football, leading the Steelers on game-winning drives, including 7 of their 9 wins this season, giving him 52 for his career, tied for 3rd most in NFL history with Tom Brady. Then, the 2 plays that stand out are the tackle. The Steelers had a 3-point lead in their 2005 season divisional round matchup against the Colts and were about to put the game away. They had a first down at the Indianapolis 2 with 1:20 left on the clock. Roethlisberger hands off to Jerome Bettis, about as sure a thing as the Steelers had that year. And yet Colts linebacker Gary Brackett lowers his helmet in the ball, pops it loose, and it's going backwards towards the Steeler end zone. Cornerback Nick Harper picks it up. He's got clear sailing. Game's going to be over, but the Colts are going to win, right? Nope. Somehow Roethlisberger makes a shoestring tackle on Harper at the 42-yard line. No TD for the Colts. Saves the win for the Steelers. And then the one I think that he'll be most remembered for, and I call it the throw. Super Bowl 43, that final drive. Ben marches the Steelers 88 yards, 3 key plays with Santonio Holmes, the 40-yard hookup to get him into field goal range, Santonio's drop in the end zone, followed by the now immortalized 6-yard toe tapper in the right corner to win it. Ben was 5 for 7 for 84 yards in the air and 1 carry for 4 yards on the ground, accounting for all the yards in that game-winning drive, showing everyone that he was the guy. He was the driving force of the Steelers offense. He may have been born and raised in Findlay, Ohio, but Roethlisberger was the epitome of Pittsburgh. And Yinzers know what I'm talking about. It's why his number 7 will never be worn again and why every quarterback from 2022 onward will be compared to him. Thanks for the memories, Big Ben. Steeler Nation, of which I am a proud member, is really going to miss you.
A couple things. Number one, he might have been born in Ohio, but he owns Cleveland like nobody's business in his career. Number 2, I've never seen a tougher son of a bitch than Ben Roethlisberger on the field. And you knew that through his waiting years when his arm kind of lost a little bit of his step. But even this year, in that Ravens game where they won themselves a playoff spot, you saw Ben Roethlisberger with a determination that you don't see out of a lot of quarterbacks out there. And he's done a lot of stuff. And number 3, and most importantly, never forget Aaron Francisco of the Cardinals falling down on the 40-yard run, on the 40-yard pass to set the Steelers up inside of the 10-yard line, but still made the play. So a lot of memories of Big Ben, and he is a damn good competitor. Started as a rookie. Does anybody remember, Jay, you can't win here, who Roethlisberger replaced as quarterback?
I know. I called it out in my comments, right?
Tommy
Rabbi, who was
Tommy
paying
Maddox?
attention.
Tommy
That's right.
Tommy Maddox. Yep. XFL MVP Tommy Maddox. But like I said, the Steelers is going to be a very interesting time for them, and we can get into this a little bit. They haven't had this situation in a long time. It's really been O'Donnell to Stewart, who was always heavily criticized, but he got the job done in a lot of occasions and got themselves.
And even Maddox did a solid job.
Yeah. And Maddox did a solid job, but Maddox kind of came in there a little unexpectedly, and then obviously the Roethlisberger.
This will be the first time really since Terry Bradshaw retired where the Steelers quarterback situation is going to be in such a state of flux.
They still made the playoffs with freaking Mason Rudolph. That's how great this freaking organization is, and very solid. Anyway,
the nicest thing I just want to say to Jay, if the San Diego Chargers weren't nice enough to hand us Eli Manning, we would have been glad to have drafted Ben Roethlisberger.
Absolutely.
And I would have been very proud to have him as a Giant and accomplished all of it.
And I'll say this too. I still remember the first Eli Ben Roethlisberger matchup in the 2004, late in the 2004 season.
Ooh.
And you watched that day, and they were going back and forth. And obviously, the Steelers won the game late, but you felt that afternoon that these were two special quarterbacks that we were watching right before our very eyes. And obviously, the next season, Phillip Rivers got his opportunity after Drew Brees moved on, and to see these 3 quarterbacks so interlocked with each other, and they're all going to be in the Hall of Fame at some point. Doesn't matter if it's first ballot, second ballot, they're all getting in. I'm just, hey, look, as a football fan, as a Giant fan, even by extension, because of the Mara Rooney connection, still a kind of part of the Steeler Nation by that extension. And I have a lot of friends down from Pittsburgh, and obviously Jay being part of that Steeler Nation also. Seeing Ben was one of the toughest quarterbacks I ever saw, and seeing guys literally hit him and he would not go down on some of these plays, which is phenomenal. And as a football fan, I'm just very appreciative to see all these 3 guys actually show why they were so special in that 2004 draft. And hey, I mean, I tip my hat to all 3 of them. Big Ben, hell of a career. Congratulations. And it's going to be great to see him in the Hall of Fame. Just about maybe 30, 40 miles away from where he grew up.
5 years from now, he's definitely. By the way, that was a Saturday game to remember in Manning's rookie season, taking over. I don't remember how many games it was since after Warner got benched, but that game was very memorable. Now you make me want to see those highlights again.
There you go.
It's
Rabbi,
on YouTube, but you want to go look at it, by the way.
Rabbi, I'll throw this out there and then I'll let you close it. I consider like you guys know, I'm a Steeler Nation fan, always have been, but I root for the Giants as well. That's what I grew up with in my house. And as I've said on the show more than once, these are 2 organizations that are the class of the NFL. They're linked by marriage. And I've been blessed to watch two Hall of Fame level quarterbacks play for my 2 favorite teams over, the last almost 2 decades. And it's been a privilege, and I'm going to miss seeing it now that, the second chapter is finally closed.
And now the Aaron Rodgers era begins. All right. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Anyway, thank you, Joe Tufaro, for bringing us what we
thanks, Joe.
Thank you for bringing us your stuff. Enjoy accountable refs on Twitter during the conference championship games on Sunday. That is capital A, lowercase c, counted all capitals, ABLE, capital REFS. And please, Jay, in the description of the next show, please account to that beautiful Twitter account, because I can't say it correctly, apparently. Joe is one of the contributors of this site, and I wanted to bring this into attention before we left tonight. Here is the penalty impact win probability chart that was posted earlier this week for the Bills and Chiefs game, it looks like an EKG, for God's sakes.
Yes, it
who is
does.
going in and out of life the way it's gone up and down and up and down. So if you are a nerd just like Jay, or actually, you know what, all of us, it's a very good site to watch. So thank you, Joe, once again, and we'll talk to you during the Super Bowl. I have a Super Bowl preview show.
Sounds great.
Next week is a Winter Olympics show. The Winter Olympics kick off in 8 days. Good Lord.
Yeah,
So
you
the
can-
other two people on this show are Jay Kaplan and Anthony Strait. My name is Steve Rabinowitz. Jay, give us the Twitter handle first, please.
At ONTH Sportslines, where you will see the link to tonight's show and, links to other interesting things in the world of sports that we feel would benefit you to check out.
Thank you, Dr. J. Facebook.com/OnTheSportsLines to see us live. YouTube.com/OnTheSportsLines on demand. We will see you next week, whenever. Change over time in the NFL now. Good night from On the Sports Lines.
Good night, everyone.
Good night, everybody.